Today's episode comes to you from the Blue Chew Studio. When you buy 2 months of Blue Chew Gold, you get the third for free with promo code JR. You'll also receive an additional 10% off and free overnight shipping on your first order at bluechew.com. Hey, it's Conrad the Mortgage Guy, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. And I'm so excited to tell you the good news. JR's home. After being in the hospital for more than a month, he's finally back at home in beautiful Oklahoma. And I know he can't wait to get back behind the microphone. I've talked to him multiple days this week. He sounds better each and every time I talk to him. He's in fighting weight. Those are not his exact words, but they're really, really close. And I'm happy to report that he is looking and feeling better than ever. And he sounds so fantastic. I can't wait for him to come back to the show. And we are hoping that we'll have his home office equipment ready to roll this time next week. But in the meantime, I thought we would pay a little homage to the late, great Terry Funk. We lost Terry 3 years ago, but this would have been his 80th birthday this week. So I thought, why don't we go back and recognize the Funker like we did 5 years ago, back in 2021, just in time for his 75th birthday. Good old JR and I are going to tackle the one and only, a true innovator. He should probably be on everyone's Mount Rushmore. He's your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Terry Funk and good old JR. Let's take a listen. Well, without further ado, let's jump into it. We're going to be talking about all things Terry Funk. He was born in Hammond, Indiana, on June 30th. So he's going to turn 77 next week. Everyone thinks Amarillo, Texas, I guess, is the birthplace of the Funks, but they didn't move there until the end of World War II. Terry's father, Dory Funk Sr., ran Western State Sports out of Amarillo. And Terry, I guess, was probably always destined to be a part of the wrestling business. What'd you see of Western States back then in Oklahoma?
Not much. Everybody was on local TV. So it wasn't a cable overlay. So if your local television signal did not reach into a specific area, like from Amarillo to Oklahoma, then you never saw it. So I never saw that show once in my lifetime. I heard a lot about it. I'm sure I've seen clips because so many of my friends worked through there, but I never saw it. But that was how it was then. That was before cable. Really got popular, and I don't think they were ever on a major cable system to get their national overlay. So consequently, it was all new to me. Now I knew the talents. The thing about that was occasionally Cowboy would book some of their talents on big shows in Oklahoma. It was still a drive. It's not an easy drive. I've driven it many times to go out to watch OU play Texas Tech in football. So nonetheless, it was all new to me in that regard.
Well, let's keep it going here. Terry's going to attend the famed West Texas State University, which is a professional athlete factory. 18 NFL players, probably most notably Mercury Morris of the NFL, Maurice Cheeks of the NBA, and even 13 pro wrestlers. Now, this is what we wrestling fans always hear about. Let's run through this crew here. Terry Funk, Tully Blanchard, Bruiser Brody, Ted DiBiase, Manny Fernandez, Dory Funk Jr., Stan Hansen, Heath Herring, Dick Murdoch, Dusty Rhodes, Tito Santana, Barry Windham, and Bobby Duncombe Sr. Everybody talks about Minneapolis and this big Minneapolis crew, but man, does anything really compare to West Texas State?
Not really, especially when you run down that roster you just did. I'm not so sure how much they delivered in the classroom.
Right.
I'm not so sure how many times they went to class. And how, I don't know that all those guys are all totally enrolled. You know, Murdoch always said that he was a student there and, you know, on scholarship. He wasn't. He never attended any class at West Texas.
I think Dusty Rhodes claims the same, right?
Dusty would probably be in that same hunt.
Yeah.
You know, guys would go in that era because of the different rules. They'd go to school a semester and not go to class. And so then at the end of the semester, and then consequently coinciding with the end of the season, their grades would not qualify them to go to the next year. Now that didn't apply to everybody. A lot of guys did go to class, and some of them did graduate. Was Tito Santana on this list?
Yeah.
I think Tito graduated because Tito became a school teacher. So I'm joking about the guys that were never enrolled. Therefore, they didn't go to class, but they still had that allegiance and that loyalty to their school. But it's incredible the amount of quality talents that went to West Texas State back in those days, and the marks that so many of them made in our world of pro wrestling.
Yeah, it really is. Terry's going to play both football and amateur wrestling here at the school. Did you ever hear of what Terry was like back in college? I mean, do you think it was much different than later? When did he come out of his shell? I guess.
Yeah, probably when he was about 6.
There you go.
Yeah, I think Terry's always been Terry. I think he's just, Terry was that over the top, bigger than life personality, young. The guys that played football with him and guys that were passing in the night out there in Canyon, Texas, will tell you that Terry's always been what you see is what you get, and which boded well for him. Big personality. So I'm assuming that Terry has always been on the same road that he's traveled now almost 77 years.
Were you keeping up with any sort of college stuff? I realize that he's a few years older than you, but as a young man, you were obsessed with football. Was that information easily accessible? Were you able to keep up with West Texas State football from where you lived in Oklahoma?
Not really. The media world, it was still shrunk. It wasn't as big and spread out as it was now, accessible.
Yeah.
So not really. They didn't make the sports pages every day, quite honestly, but they had, what we all knew they had a good football program because they had some quality athletes. And, but no, I didn't keep up with it just wasn't on the radar, and where I lived, it was either Oklahoma State, getting a little taste every now and then. Tulsa had some good years. And of course, Oklahoma had a tradition that was being big monster, much like Alabama was being fed every year. So, no, I that's kind of that was our little world there, because again, the shrunken world of the media was a lot different than it is today.
Let's, before we jump into Terry's wrestling career, cause he's going to start working in 65. Oof. Some of our younger listeners who really just grew up with you in the Attitude Era, they probably don't know what a big player Dory Funk Sr. was in the business. Can you add some context to that?
Well, he was a power broker. Dory Sr. had a lot of influence within the NWA, and there's several guys you can point to that had the same. Fritz Von Erich had that influence. Eddie Graham. A lot of those former wrestlers turned promoters had invested themselves within the NWA. And that was basically all about who had access to the dates for the champion. That's what it was all about. The champion was the thing. And of course, Dory Sr. had 2 sons that were NWA champions, and both very, very good. They're different as hell, but they were different in their not just their performance, but their style, presentation. So I'm a big believer that it was to me, that's a story in itself. How many ex-wrestlers leveraged themselves into a territory through their contacts, the fact that they were working and they were valued, draws and so forth. So it was Roy Shire was a former wrestler, started promoting San Francisco, did it for years and years. Vern Gagne, AWA. He was smart enough to create his own entity. he didn't want to be beholding to the NWA and the whims of a small group of wrestling politicians. And so it was an interesting time to be around wrestling. I was in '65. I was 13 years old. So Terry started long before I got really aware of. I was still hauling hay and playing junior high football and things of that nature in '65. So, but I'm sure glad I made that choice, that career choice.
Let's talk about his debut. It happens 1965, December 9th against Sputnik Monroe. Boy, you want to talk about a wrestling history lesson. Give everybody the scoop on who Sputnik Monroe was.
Well, Sputnik started, I think, in the Memphis area. Was a hell of a heel, and therefore, when he mentioned that somebody was a hell of a heel, more often than not, this next sentence will be, and they were a hell of a babyface. One of Sputnik's claims to fame was he helped integrate wrestling,
yes, sir,
in Memphis, and so he was instrumental in that because also Sputnik. I don't know how gracious Sputnik was. I'm not peeing on his Cheerios regarding his vision for integration. It was well past time when the black people had to sit in the balcony and all that shit. It's horrible. And then finally, Sputnik says, "Look, the higher price seats. They got the money for these seats. They should be allowed to sit where the hell they want." And then more of those high dollar seats, ringside, for example, reserve seats, would be made available. Therefore, it would increase the grosses, which went directly as a portion of those grosses to the talent's pay, because that's the only way they got paid was to sell tickets.
Right.
So Sputnik was big, and that was his major claim to fame. I came across Sputnik about this time as he became a rival to my boyhood hero, Danny Hodge, in that junior heavyweight division, because Sputnik he might have been 200, maybe, small, 5'8", 5'9", somewhere in that neighborhood. But he had a gruff voice. He had that blonde streak in his hair, scars everywhere. He was a swordsman and a lot of blood. So he had a little issue with Hodge, TV program. And then he'd run do his time, then he'd go to another territory like so many did.
Right.
So Sputnik was a very unique figure in pro wrestling. So if you look back at integration and things of that nature, Sputnik was always going to be in that conversation. And he also was a good enough hand that Funk Sr. knew that Sputnik would take care of Terry. He wouldn't put Terry in deep water that Terry couldn't navigate from. He was, a high level enhancement guy in that respect. So, they knew who to book Terry with that would make sure that Terry was taken care of, and not taken care of like you don't hurt him. Terry, that's the least of their worries, because Terry and the Funks in general are all tough guys. But it was just a situation where you want the best debut for this kid that you can. So you need a dancing partner in there that can accentuate his skill set at that point of his life.
Let's also keep it going and talk about, the whole idea of him coming in as a promoter's son. Obviously, Dory's got a ton of respect. Dory Sr., that is. Terry, of course, has a brother, Dory Jr. How hard do you think that was? And I know that you're not necessarily a promoter's son, but you grew up with promoters, whether it was Leroy McGurk or Bill Watts. You're really cutting your teeth as sort of the right-hand man of a promoter. And that's no different in WCW with Jim Herd, or the WWF with Vince McMahon. What sort of pressure do you think was added simply by the fact that, hey, you are the brother of a wrestler, and more importantly, the son of the promoter?
Well, Terry never used that, as far as I can see, as an excuse or a reason. He wanted to make it on his own, and he had that great background from his father. He had the culture down. His game was still evolving, and You know, they just, he wanted to do it himself, but getting his dad getting him some bookings, and then subsequently helping Terry get recognized to a level that he could be trusted and depended upon to be the NWA champion after his brother's run. It sort of didn't hurt things, you know. So I kind of think I'm a big believer, Conrad, in some of these second generation cats.
Yeah,
men or women. They have a different edge to them. They have a different feel, a different passion, different motivation, and not all of them. Not all second generation guys are successful,
right?
But a lot of them were, and I think it was because of how they were raised, and they knew what was expected of them. For Terry and Dory, they knew what their father expected of them as far as being on time and being reliable and working your ass off and staging a great match. So I'm sure there's pressure, but maybe not as there's pressure on you when you don't have the talent, and you know that you're getting booked because of who you're related to, and or who you're connected to, your social group or whatever. I think there's a lot more of that today even than one would imagine. So he had big shoes to fill, and he knew that if the promoter that he was working for wasn't satisfied in some aspect of the presentation, that they're going to call Dad.
Right.
They're going to call Senior, and Senior's going to have I don't say the woodshed, but he's going to have a little chat with the boys. So that's the old school stuff that I like. So, but Terry just had so much talent, but he was a wild child. So sometimes that would lead to an old school kind of a more structured promoter to wonder, what the hell have I done here? Because this guy's out of control. But the out of control element of Terry Funk was kind of what made him a star.
Let's talk about how he becomes a star. He's tagging with his old pal Dory, his dear brother. They're rising through the tag team ranks, and they're working top guys in singles as Ernie Ladd and Hank James. When do you first hear about Terry Funk, the wrestler? Do you remember?
Through the magazines, quite honestly. It wasn't no Twitter, no social media. So the magazines, though, covered them. And the publishers of the magazines, the old After Mags and all those stuff, George Napolitano's magazines and so forth, they covered these second generation guys because it's a good story. And the fact that these guys are not ham and eggers. Dory Jr. and Terry were bona fide stars early on because of their mindset, their preparation. They were ready to go. They've been trained correctly. And I'm sure they were trained very aggressively and very hard. But nonetheless, the magazines kind of tipped me off to it. And, I've had I think the first time I ever saw Terry, I know it was the first time I ever saw Terry. Cowboy had an angle going on in Mid-South where Ken Mantell was the top babyface, and Colonel Buck Robley, who also came through that West Texas area. And I think he might have been from Indiana too. I'm not quite sure about that, but I think he was. He had a bounty on Mantell, the old bounty angle, and it ran for 6 or 8 weeks. So Cowboy would bring in, like, to New Orleans or the biggest houses, he'd bring in somebody. I think Ernie was a bounty hunter at one time. So, but when it came down to the last bounty hunter to take on Ken Mantell was Terry Funk, and I was referee. So the first time I ever saw Terry was back in the 70s as the last bounty hunter in the program. And boy, I'll tell you, I had never been in the ring, and I refereed a lot of matches for Cowboy back in that era. I never was in the ring with anybody quite like Terry Funk, because there was a lot of guys had a rhythm and a cadence, so to speak, and things that you would expect them to do. But man, oh man, Terry he had another book. He played from it. He had a different playbook, Conrad. And I'll just tell you that I thought that night that I had seen as good a wrestler to date that I had ever seen. He was that amazing. And of course, he put Mantell over in a bloodbath and a physical son of a bitch, and it was great. Fans loved it. It drew money. And what it did is it got Mantell over as a fighting, believable babyface. So guys like Ernie and that was the funny thing about it. I never heard anybody having any issues about doing a job, putting somebody over. It's just the way it was, a normal progression. And in this bounty hunter thing, it's always going to culminate with the final bounty, the babyface succeeding, and then moving on to the object guy, which is Buck Robley.
Let's talk about his brother Dory. He becomes the NWA World Champion in 1968, and essentially the Funk Dynasty is born. What do you think of Dory being World Champion? I think he's probably Bruce Pritchard's favorite NWA World Champion.
Well, that's all that matters. Whatever Bruce thinks.
We have that argument all the time because I only ever saw Dory in the later years when Dory had slowed way down. Because, Dory probably wrestled since you and I've been recording this. He's never going to stop. And so I saw him wrestle in the later years and I was like, man, I just don't get it. And of course, Bruce being older than me, he says, you had to be there.
Yeah.
But I'm curious your stance because, I've never talked about it. What do you think of Dory as the champion?
I loved him because he was so solid. You look for a champion that can work with anybody. We mentioned this Saturday night, Omega is going to defend the title, the AEW title, against Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Well, it's Kenny Omega's job and responsibility to put the quote unquote shine on Jungle Jack and to do things that accentuate what Jungle Jack does well. And adapt to that, enhance this challenger. And that's what I was so proud of watching Dory. Just was, he always made everybody better. So I was bullshitting about Bruce there. I don't have no argument about Dory being a great NWA champion. I thought that he certainly was, but he's, I had a match one time. My first NWA title match that I refereed was between Harley Race and Junior. And I went back and Cowboy said, I got a good booking for you now. You're going to do the main event, which is the first main event I'd ever done. So I didn't start off slow. I didn't work. I kind of worked into it, but it got me heat on me with the other referees because the Kid, as I was called, goddamn, it's been a long time since I've been called the Kid, that I was I was the chosen one for that match. And then until they found out it was going to be an hour Broadway, I didn't know walking to the ring what a Broadway meant.
Right.
When I was walking to the ring to do this NWA title match between two of the greatest of all time. And I think we can all agree on that. Yeah. Harley Race and Dory Jr. were two of the very, very best of all time. And they still rank that in my world. So I asked the old referee that trained me, Leo Voss. I said, Leo, kind of, the old deal. Hey, Leo, what the fuck is a Broadway? And I'm thinking, well, it's got something to do with New York.
Right.
Broadway. Where's Broadway? It's in New York. So it's got something, I don't know what it is though. And he puts his hand over his mouth so nobody can hear us. It's a draw. So now I'm processing all this information. So it's a 60-minute draw. And I went into the little locker room in Tulsa. And there they sat. Old Harley was smoking those Marlboros. Junior's relaxed like he was in a coma. Just relaxed as hell. And so I said, is there anything I need to know before I go out there? This is big, really big for me. And Dory says, Harley says, show me how you count. So I got down on the concrete floor and I counted to 3. And he said, you count that way every time. I said, yes, sir. He said, good. Make sure you're consistent. I said, you can't make me break if you don't see what I've done, because Harley was a heel. You can't make me break if you don't see what I've done. So you call what you see and see what you call. It's kind of like regular sports.
Yeah.
So I said, fine. And Dory had nothing to add to the conversation. He was just, again, and this is, I remember them saying to each other, well, what do you want to do then tonight? Well, I was still standing in that little room. And they said, I don't know. I don't care. St. Louis, Kansas City, Tampa. They had all these matches named by town that their style.
That's funny.
Yeah. And so it's like the incessant screaming of Omaha by Peyton Manning. Omaha. They had their Omaha. They had their Kansas City. And hell, I didn't know what none of that meant. I'm still doing Tulsa. So anyway, that's kind of where we were with that. And that was a hell of a deal. I always thought, here's my fear. My fear was I'm going to get a near fall. I'm going to get down head to head where I can see the shoulders, and I'm going to count deliberately in a regular cadence, and I'm going to count the wrong guy out. And we're going to have a new NWA champion because of the referee screw up, which I felt like, Conrad, that I would be blackballed.
Right.
Fired on the spot. So I was a little, I was so tight you couldn't drive a nail up my ass with a sledgehammer. It was tight. So man. So anyway, that was my first big foray into a main event, and I was in good hands. And the other uniqueness is that I think, I know Harley was, but I think Dory Jr. was also left-handed. So that makes you reverse things. You break on the right side. They're in the corner. You stand on the guy on the outside's right, because you don't want to be hit in the face with a left-handed elbow to your teeth or your nose, your eye, or whatever it may be. So it was a fun experience. But Dory was they were amazing. Here's the other thing, Conrad, before I leave this story. I never heard him call one spot. I'm standing next to them.
Wow.
I'm in the ring with them. It wasn't where guys are dependent on memorizing a match. These son of bitches they didn't plan nothing but the finish. And that was on the last 2 or 3 minutes of going to their false finish series and getting getting to the time limit. Ding, ding, ding. So it was a great experience for me, but a lot of credit all the credit goes to those two guys. So to Bruce's defense, I just like rusted his balls.
Of course.
I saw something you guys did the other day where he had his little JR face up. He was doing an impersonation of me doing porn.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw you bastards. Sassafras my ass. How's that for you?
You know what's funny? I know how you saw that, but let's move on. Terry heads to Japan, and he becomes a big star and a draw. What was it about Terry that really connected with Japanese fans, do you think?
Unpredictability, non-traditional.
Yeah.
And still that innate ability to make whomever he was working with look better than they actually were. Junior the same way. Junior had a huge respect in Japan, much like Terry, only it was just a different style. It was in a different wrapper. It was great taste, but a different wrapper. And so they also had respect, and they also had the West Texas territory, Conrad. So if somebody in Japan wanted to book one of their young guys to come to the States for more seasoning, there you go. So it was a two-way thing here. It was a kind of a booking partnership. But what opened the eyes of all the booking partnership that existed there was the fact both guys are really, really good.
Unfortunately, Terry's father would pass away, and he's going to help take over the Amarillo territory. And he's written in his book about how tough those times were for him. Have you ever heard any stories about that time in Texas and what the Amarillo territory was like once Senior passed away?
Well, it's like, I think it was like a lot of territories, Conrad. You had one alpha male that ran everything and handled the payroll, the routing, and generally the routing was not a big pain in the ass because they ran the same towns on the same night every week. So you had a route. So that wasn't too challenging. But booking was the big thing, and bookkeeping, things that wrestlers, sometimes you get burned out on booking.
Right.
You see the same faces and do the same things. And so that's why owners would hire bookers. And, but all I would say to that matter is that, when Senior died, it left a massive void, not only in the lives of his two sons, but also in the office. They were prepared to be wrestlers. They were not prepared to be, specifically be, administrators. So I think that was probably the rub there. I just got thrown into this deep water in a very unfortunate way.
All right, by now, if you know my wife, you know that she's always looking for ways to upgrade our routines. And recently we found out about Lorenco. This is a chewing gum that actually makes your teeth stronger every time you use it. Lorenco is better for you chewing gum that uses the same mineral your teeth are made of, and it's all to support daily enamel health. Lorenco actually uses 9-hydroxyapatite. I probably screwed that up, but it's the mineral that your enamel is actually made of. It actually strengthens your enamel and repairs the damage. It comes in a ton of cool flavors too, like mint. That's my go-to. My dad really rocks the cinnamon. Megan likes the bubble gum. Who doesn't like berry? They've even got a really great fluoride-free toothpaste too. And I got to tell you, Lorenco sent me the gum and I'm a huge fan. I know you will be too. I like that it tastes good. I like the flavors. I like that the taste will actually last. We've all had that gum and it feels like the flavor just disappears immediately. That is not the case here. But what I really like about this is it makes my mouth feel fresh. I feel like my teeth are getting whiter. And I don't know if this is just because we're all getting older or what. I feel like my teeth are less sensitive to hot or cold. I'm a big believer in this product. I actually keep them with me in the car. I find myself whenever I have a lunch appointment or a breakfast appointment, man, I'm popping these things in immediately after. You're going to want to keep one of these in the car and on your person. Hey, maybe even by the bedside table. I don't know. Here's what I do know. It's a totally effortless way to make sure that you're taking the best care of your teeth possible. Sign me up for that. And right now, Lorenco is offering our listeners up to 50% off at buylorene.com/JR. That's buylorene.com/JR for up to 50% off. That's BUYLARINE.com/JR for up to 50% off. buylorene.com/JR. Let's talk about what's next for Terry. It takes him 10 years and a little bit of controversy, but he eventually becomes the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. As the story goes, Dory Funk Jr. failed to show for a title shot against Jack Briscoe in Miami. Terry shows instead and defeats Jack on December 10th. Before we get into Terry's victory itself, the story behind Dory Jr.'s NWA title reign ending was he was supposed to drop the title to Jack, but then, quote unquote, got hurt in a truck accident. And Dory wound up losing the title instead to Harley Race, who then dropped it to Jack Briscoe. Many at the time questioned it. It was a little bit of world title controversy. Do you think Jack had any issues dropping the title to Terry, or was Jack just business? What do you think?
Jack was business. And I also, knowing Dory Jr. as well as I do and have for 30 plus years, I just find it challenging to believe that this is some grandiose plan so that the Oklahoman didn't beat the Texan in Texas for the coveted NWA title.
Right.
Maybe it's just because my Pollyanna vision of it, I don't want it to be true. And I don't think it was true with all that controversy. Sounds like a storyline to me. And, but then all of a sudden you got several guys that, have, I don't want to say squatters' rights, Conrad, but you got a lot of guys now in that chase.
Right.
And so, and subsequently going forward, how many great Jack Briscoe Funk matches were there. Even Jerry and Jack, the Briscoes versus the Funks, was a big deal. But there was always that kind of a friendly, it might not have been so friendly, but there was a non-violent rivalry. And quite frankly, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's all that Oklahoma, Texas rivalry shit. So, but I don't think that Jack would have had any issue doing business with anybody that the NWA selected, because he was a class guy. And Jack also knew that as this program evolved, he was going to be the champion. So I don't know. It makes for a good story. I've heard a lot of renditions of it, but I just don't believe that Dory Jr. would avoid losing the title. And I think it was scheduled to be lost in Houston, right? I think.
Yep. You're exactly right.
So, it's just the folklore says to me that Dory Jr. would not fulfill his obligations. I don't want to believe that. I have nothing to prove it to me that it was true. Now, Bruce may have a better answer because, Bruce is so connected to Paul Bosch and Houston, and that's where Bruce's hometown. He may know more about that particular issue than I probably does, but I just refuse to believe that was happening.
Put in the context. Of course, these days, Nick Aldis is doing a great job as the NWA World Champion, but back then the WWE wasn't what it is now. It was a territory, and obviously AEW didn't exist. The NWA was the, not just governing body, but like they were professional wrestling. And so when you were the NWA World Champion, you were the top guy in the whole doggone industry, not just in Florida, not just in New York, not just Texas, but all over.
Right.
And, I'm curious from your perspective, did Terry deserve that honor? Did he make the belt? Did the belt make him? We hear that cliche a lot when it comes to belts.
Hell, I don't know. He was, I don't know how anybody could doubt the fact that Terry wasn't qualified to be the NWA champion.
Right.
He was certainly qualified. And the other thing about that too was, for the NWA's piece of business, you had the Funks going to Japan all the time.
Right.
They had a business partnership there. And not only were they working on top in these major venues, they were, again, as I mentioned earlier, they were bringing some of those young Japanese talents over to Texas to work the territory, to get experience. And that was a big favor that was coveted by the Japanese booking office. I don't know if that was just Inoki or Baba. I think it was after Ricky Dozan got murdered. But nonetheless, they had a partnership. So all of a sudden, now the Japanese are getting coveted dates on the NWA champion. And that was a big deal, basically simply on what you just said. It was the title. It was a big deal. It was made a big deal in Japan by their writers, their magazine people, their TV shows. The NWA champion was on a pedestal. And due to the Japanese relationship with the Funks, they had an opportunity to use that champion and draw money. So it was, I think Terry was, I don't think it was too soon or anything along those lines. Terry was such a contrast to Junior that people said, man, this is quite a departure, even though these guys are brothers and they have the family resemblance and they are fundamentally sound. They work snug. They tell good stories. They just have a different presentation. So I think Terry was a great choice for the champion. And you look at how smart, how shrewd the Japanese were as far as their business acumen. All of a sudden, they get a partnership that includes the NWA title.
Hard to beat.
Not a bad deal, buddy.
So eventually, and by the way, I guess it's worth mentioning in case you're keeping score at home, Terry and Dory become the first set of brothers to ever be NWA World Champions. Pretty big deal. Harley Race is going to defeat Terry in Toronto on February 6, 1977. That makes Harley a two-time NWA World Champion. but it's 424 days as champ for Terry Funk. Eventually, though, the Funks decide to sell the Amarillo territory to Blackjack Mulligan and Dick Murdoch not long after Terry dropped the title.
Can you say plane wreck, train wreck, car wreck?
All that, all the
everything. It was, I remember Watts would talk a lot to Murdoch, and Cowboy was a different businessman. You're well aware of Bill's credentials.
Yes.
He was a businessman. And, I learned so much in just my normal business, paying bills on time, being responsible with your money, saving money. I learned from Cowboy. He didn't want to see me end up like, he'd point out guys. Hey, kid, see that guy right there? I guarantee you get more money in the bank than he does. Yeah, but Bill, he's driving a Cadillac. Don't make a shit. The only reason he's driving a Cadillac is because they can't find it. I'm sure he's behind on payments. Don't be that guy. You can't spend more than you earn. You got to balance your books. And that's why the story I had told that one time about Murdoch not cashing a $1 check.
Yeah.
He knew Cowboy was going to be anal as hell to find that $1. It's missing. But the check had never been cashed. I know that sounds ludicrous, but there is a rhyme to this reason. So, but Murdoch and Mulligan, albeit great in-ring talents, and they're big Texas guys and big Texas baby faces and all that stuff, they weren't ready for that. We talked about Dory and Terry not wanting that, seemingly didn't want that obligation to be to do the bookkeeping and to do all that mundane like work. Then you amplify that about 20 times and you got Mulligan and Murdoch. So it was interesting, but that was a brother-in-law type deal. Look, I'm not so sure did Mulligan go to West Texas? I know Mulligan was one of the first guys Bear Bryant tried to recruit when Bear Bryant was at Texas A&M.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Mulligan was a big time recruit. That's a story I've always heard. It sounds correct. I mean, Bob Wyndham was a massive lineman that had quickness and athleticism and all that good stuff. And as the story goes, the legendary Bear Bryant was really in love with his upside. You don't see too many guys 6'6", 300 pounds in that era,
right?
That could move around. So anyway, to me, when that happened, of course, I was sold by Cowboy. I was a Cowboy disciple. He said, "Well, this is going to last about X long," and sure enough, he was about right. It just fell apart.
Let's keep it moving here and talk about what's next. We mentioned that they're going to sell the territory, but Terry wrote in his book that he felt like the business was changing and now was the time to sell. And for whatever reason, it's always felt like Terry was a visionary for the pro wrestling business. Why do you think that is?
Well, Terry's always been known as somebody that thinks outside the box. You can see that in the matches that he's had that we all can recall in different characterizations, as the white meat babyface, as the low-down scoundrel, heel, Chainsaw Charlie, all these other things that he did. My eye, Lawler, you son of a bitch. My eye. The empty arena match. I was entertained as hell in that match. Lawler and Funk had great chemistry, by the way. And of course, good old Lance Russell did a great job in an empty arena doing his thing back in the day. But Terry's always been a guy that thought outside the box, looking down the road. So was Terry Funk a visionary? Damn right he was. And he always had a good vision for the business and a plan. He always had a plan. And he would think things through to see if they worked or not in his mind. So he was truly a visionary, no doubt about it, Connie.
Terry has literally traveled the world working for everyone from Eddie Graham to the Sheik to Giant Baba. His career has probably spanned, I think literally 6 decades. When did you first get the chance to meet Terry in person?
When I refereed that bounty match in New Orleans.
Okay. So
That's it.
Even though, okay, I got you. I thought that was perhaps a different time because his
It
brother.
was 1975, I think, or 76, mid 70s, Connie. I got in the business in 74. And so within not too long after that, Cowboy had me doing multiple things. You know, I learned the great skill of being able to roll a joint while I'm steering the car with my knees.
Oh,
That was a great trait. I'll do that for you someday if you want.
Thank you, though.
It will tape it. No kidding. But refereeing and helping look over booking, and looking over booking meant this. It didn't mean that I was this young kid that was this prodigy that was booking events for Cowboy. What it meant was that I would look at the booking to make sure he had not inadvertently double booked somebody. You know, you didn't want, you know, a guy to be in Lafayette and Oklahoma City at the same time. That won't work. Not even for Cowboys. So little things like that, but it helped me in my education about the business and behind the scenes. And then certainly the same thing, he would give me tapes to look at to see if I saw somebody that because I was 22 years old. I was young. I was the demographic that he kind of wanted to, you know, hang with. And I said, well, I thought this guy was pretty good. Or this guy here kind of seemed like he was playing a wrestler. So I learned a lot of things in that scenario. So, but in any event, Terry was always, after I refereed that match, we bonded. As a matter of fact, after that match, he offered me a job to come work in their office in Amarillo and referee. Well, I had no desire to do that. If I'm going to go referee somebody, I'm going to do it at home, and I'm going to sit still under the Cowboys learning tree, because to me, that was an invaluable education, and it has since proved out to be true. So I'm not sure what you asked me, but anyway.
Well, let's talk about when Terry decides to venture out of wrestling. He does Paradise Alley with Sylvester Stallone, and later on he did Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. And I know that these days when people talk about wrestlers and movies, some people will go tongue in cheek and reference Hulk Hogan. Maybe they'll poke fun at a John Cena movie. These days, everybody's talking about The Rock or Batista, but Terry Funk's probably one of the first guys to do it, right?
No doubt. And they weren't ham and egg rolls.
Right.
You know, I Paradise Alley, one of my favorite movies.
From 78, by the way.
Wow.
I mean, I know a lot of people go say, "Oh, what about Hulk Hogan?" Yeah, 78.
Right. No, Terry was a trendsetter, man. See, all these guys will take credit for their own successes, like most people in wrestling do. They don't realize they're surrounded by a team and a group of people that enhance their opportunities to be successful. Terry led the way for this thing. Hollywood saw that these wrestlers are merely larger than life stuntmen because they do their own stunts, and they're also, and maybe more importantly, are extemporaneous speakers. Because back in the day, talents didn't spend all fucking day going over their match. It's going to last 4 minutes. Okay, so I bullshit guys all the time. Okay, now you breathe, you inhale, then he'll exhale. Then you can lock up. But write it down now so you don't forget how to lock up.
Right.
It's fucking hideous. I can only imagine, and this goes to, I would suggest every wrestling company has some of these same ills, Connie, that their talents have no confidence in their own innate ability and their instincts to go out and work a match. I do Harley Race and Dory Funk Jr. They're going to do an hour Broadway. I don't hear them call a fucking spot.
Right.
I didn't see one goddamn leg slap, for fuck's sake. God damn it, Conrad. I want to pinch your cheeks, you motherfucker. But yeah, come on. So that was just a different time, and these guys are creating art in a unique way. And then Terry finds his way into the silver screen, and those movies helped reinvent him again.
Right.
It's another pat on the ass. Okay, moving up the ladder now. So he was so talented in a variety of ways.
Let's talk about 1981. Memphis, Tennessee is on fire. I think most people agree those early 80s, 81, 82, 83, probably the golden years financially for Memphis. I'm sure we'll break that down some other time. But it's a scene where we're going to have one of the most famous matches, not only of Terry Funk's career, but of all of wrestling. It's Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk. They're working a program that winds up in an empty arena match. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, how in the world did we get to that stipulation? Because back in the day, you would have things like, we're going to build to a cage match, and then we might have a lumberjack match before that or some such. But an empty arena match, the concept is Lawler is so popular with the local fans, these filthy Tennessee fans, or whatever Terry was saying at the time, he can't possibly get a fair shake. The only way to make sure that I get treated fairly is if there are none of these heathen fans here in the arena. So an empty arena match is set. Of course, it's only a few minutes long before Lawler kicks Funk's elbow while he's holding a piece of a broken 2x4. He jams it into his eye accidentally.
My eye.
There you go. Tremendous piece of business. What did you think of this creative when you first saw it?
I loved it. I loved it because it was so different and unique, and I hadn't seen it before. We said on this show many times that wrestling fans inherently like new. They like new challengers, they like new champions, they like new angles, new storylines, new marriages, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, and I was in that, I might not be on your level of consuming as much product as you have to do your 7 podcasts a week.
Sure.
But it was different. And you had Lawler and Funk. They could have a match in a fucking cardboard box and I'd buy a ticket for it.
Yes, agree.
So you had those two artisans doing their thing in an empty arena. And then, so it creates a whole different audio dynamic. It's different ambient, different ambiance. And then you had good old Lance Russell there working off a stick mic, as I recall, which is hard to do. A lot of fans don't understand how hard that is to call a match on a stick mic without any headsets on. Can't hear yourself, can't hear the crowd, can't hear a pop, a slap, or a chop, or whatever it may be. So that's why I always give credit for Lance. He's one of the best ever. He may be the best ever. Hell, I don't know. But he's a hell of a good guy. But anyway, I thought that match was unique and it's different, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. And there's, that's where I think we borrowed that for Foley and Rock. Had an empty arena match.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah.
And so it was revitalized, shall we say. So anyhow, I liked it, Connie. I really did. I thought it was a very unique presentation. I don't know whose idea it was totally. If you asked Lawler, he'll probably say it was his. If you asked Terry, he'll probably say it was his. I don't care. I know I enjoyed it and I was in the business and I was a wrestling fan.
Let's talk a little bit about the shock that comes next. And I know, Jim, I hope you're sitting down, but Terry Funk went back to Japan and announced his retirement. So Terry Funk retired here. And of course, as we know, that's all she wrote. That'll be it. He's going to finish up with a retirement tour for all Japan. And that's it. That's the end of Terry's wrestling career. It was cut too short. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Well, it's another way to draw money. I don't think he had any intention to retire.
Really?
No. I think maybe he was thinking that maybe Hollywood was his new ticket because of the success of Paradise Alley and Roadhouse. Goddamn, man, those movies they're still getting airplay.
Yes, they are.
They're on cable. And they just me being the fan that I am, and when I catch it, I watch it, even though I've seen them both numerous times. But yeah, I don't think he may have had a kind of a whim. I need to get off the road. I don't know how old Terry would have been in 70 and 83. But he was no spring chicken. But I don't think he was going to ever retire. I mean, we'll look back at his track record. How many times did he come out of retirement? He may have the all-time record for that, Connie.
It's the ultimate, people poke fun these days and they say, oh, the Dusty finish. Well, this is the Terry finish, right? It's the false finish. He's retired. No, he's not. He's retired. No, he's not, because he retires in 83 and then comes back to wrestle in All Japan in 84. Now we know these days it's sort of just looked at as, well, haha. But in Japan, do you think that hurt his credibility a little bit? Or was it box office because people were so excited to see him back?
I think it was box office because people were excited to see him back. And here's the deal. If you're a good announcer or you're a good promoter, you simply say he's changed his mind. He missed it too much. He missed you guys too much. He missed the competition too much. So maybe on the ignoring the advice of family, he's going to get back in because he misses it so much. And I can see that ingratiating Terry even more and galvanizing him with his target audience. It's marketing. It's what you do for a living.
Yep.
It's marketing, man. You can't sell goods out of an empty wagon. And he liked those payoffs because he got paid really, really well. I mean, those guys are going to Japan in that era, especially for Mr. Baba. And I'm not knocking Inoki, but Mr. Baba was always known as a real good payoff guy. Yeah, Stan Hansen. God, I wish I could ask Bruiser Brody. Those guys, Vader, all those cats made huge money because I had to negotiate with those issues when I was, in various stages of my career. So, but I never thought that he was going to retire. I thought he was still looking for opportunities, and he found them.
Well, he's going to find them all over the place. He's eventually going to come back to America, and boy, there's a whole new world here. He's going to sign up for the World Wrestling Federation. And he says in his book, he saw the writing on the wall when Vince had Hulk Hogan and Cyndi Lauper do an angle together, and he knew that the quote unquote war was already over. So Funk's going to debut in June of 85 for the WWF. Do you think it was a big blow to the NWA or Mid-South or the territory guys for Terry Funk to sort of join the evil empire here?
Maybe internally to some degree. Do I think anybody ever approached Terry and said, what are you doing to your NWA legacy? No. Terry didn't do anything, Conrad, that anybody on any promoter's roster would not have done.
Right.
The hot kid in town was McMahon's revitalized WWF, and there was going to be opportunity there, big houses. Again, most of the monies you're going to earn are going to be, now WWF had a good plan as far as royalties as it's evolved. I got a royalty check just the other day.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, man. I probably got to buy a couple of new cars. No kidding. I did 8 more Rolexes and I get a boot job from my girlfriend.
By the way, if you'd have bought those 8 Rolexes this time last year, they'd be double in value. So not always a bad buy.
Really?
Oh, dude, it is bananas what's happened during the pandemic to watch prices. It's freaking crazy.
I got one, and I practice what I preach.
It's worth more than what you paid for it right now.
Well, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
That'll be something else I can leave my heirs.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, it was the obvious thing to do. These guys are independent contractors. You got to go where the money is. If you're a Cowboy, I can guarantee you Cowboy didn't give a shit because Terry is going for the payday.
Right.
And I can assure you that if Watts had been in Terry's position, didn't own a territory, was still active and all this other stuff, he'd have wanted to do the same thing. You want to travel to where the cash is. You do that every day selling mortgages.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just no different. So, but some of the guys, just to make a good show or to make a good stand or impression, would say, "Oh, I can't believe he did that to us." Bullshit. You guys can't even fucking agree to where to go to have lunch. So who gives a shit? And that's what it was. That's what it became. It wasn't that fluid. When you mentioned earlier about it being the deal, the big deal, the NWA title, and it was. And I'm still a big fan of the NWA and NWA title. But I don't think anybody would have said shit with a mouthful, quite frankly, with regarding this particular topic.
Chat me up about what the World Wrestling Federation did to the Funks in terms of they changed their presentation. You start to see Terry bring out a branding iron. He's in his full cowboy attire, but he's also going to bring out a branding iron, use that as one of his gimmicks, which I get. But they're also going to rename his brother Dory, and they're going to call him Hoss Funk, a former NWA World Champion. We're going to change his name. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to add another Funk brother that isn't even a Funk brother, Jimmy Jack Funk. In hindsight, somebody who grew up on the Funks, what did you think of that?
Didn't like it. Didn't see any need for it. But again, you know, Vince is very adamant about owning his intellectual property.
Yeah.
And you know, Walt Disney did. You know, the guy that voiced over Mickey Mouse didn't own Mickey Mouse. Walt Disney owned Mickey Mouse. And because he could always get another guy to voice a cartoon. And so this is what in Disney's world. So Vince has always traveled that same path. I want to own my own intellectual property. Somebody said, does Vince own the nickname, or does he own JR? I said, no, he only owns vowels. A, E, I, O, and U, you dumb fuck. No, he doesn't own my name. So as a result, I didn't like the Hoss Funk. I could see it relating, but but because they're from Texas, that's what they got saddled with. Why do you think I've been wearing a black hat forever? Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That's why. And in the beginning, I didn't like it because there's something else to carry on the road at the end. But now, all these years later, I don't feel right if I don't have my hat on when I'm working.
Right.
So no, I didn't like it, but I like the fact both those guys are getting booked, and they were bringing some of their own style and some of their own fundamental soundness to the presentation, which I always endorse.
Let's mention some highlights for him here. He's going to main event Madison Square Garden in September of 1985. Even for a territory guy, it's got to be a big deal to main event MSG, does it not?
Yeah, hell yeah. For all of us that got to work there. I can't tell you how excited I was first time I did a show in the Garden. I'd seen the Garden on TV on numerous occasions, whether it be the Knicks or, you know, hockey, the Rangers, concerts. So to actually walk in those hallways in the locker room area and all those pictures are hanging on the wall of talents that work there, not just wrestling talents. Matter of fact, the Muhammad Ali's, you know, the Beatles, all these things. Here's this old fat kid from Oklahoma is going to sit at ringside and broadcast a show from Madison Square Garden. It was a huge thrill. And I can only imagine when you work the West Texas territory, understanding that every they didn't have major, huge arenas. It was a cool deal. You're a performer. The world's most famous arena is that for everybody. So I'm sure he was jacked to the gills on that deal.
Yeah, he's going to go 3.5 minutes with JYD, and then he's going to be on the very first pay-per-view, but he loses by countout in 25 seconds to Moondog Spot. And the rumor and innuendo at the time was Funk wasn't being pushed or featured. And supposedly it's because Vince thought this was another way of proving that the WWF product was superior to the NWA product. And sometimes when I bring things like that up to Bruce in a more modern context, like, oh, you bring this guy over from WCW and what do? First thing out, you beat him. Do you really think that's part of Vince's personality? I want to prove, yeah, I know I got this guy under contract. Yeah, I know I'm paying him money. But we've also heard, hey, I want to beat him and see what his attitude is like, or I want to make sure the fans know that we're the superior product. And a lot of fans were even sort of throwing the flag a few years ago at WrestleMania when Sting finally had his WrestleMania moment and Triple H beat him. What say you? Do you think Vince, even back then, had more of an axe to grind with the NWA?
I don't know if the axe as much as he wanted to make sure everybody knew that that McMahon's brand was a superior brand in pro wrestling. And one way you do that is you bring in these established stars and he beat their ass with one of your guys.
Right.
So I think it was a little personal, but I can also see the business acumen in that regard to make sure that whatever you do, you always establish the fact that your brand is the top brand, and that more often than not, look, we did the same damn thing on this, the angle, what was it called? When the WCW guys,
The invasion.
The what?
The invasion.
The invasion. Yeah. It's invaded my thought process because it was so blotched. And one of the reasons that it was blotched was the fact that what we're talking about right now, the other guys didn't have a frigging chance. Because, the invasion guys, and it also wasn't like it was the most star-studded invasion lineup, but it was the best we could put together because a lot of the stars didn't want to work. They were getting paid guaranteed money for sitting on their ass. Can't knock that. They've been working, they're bumped, they're tired, they're older, they're healing, and they're making huge money for walking out to the mailbox. And there ain't nothing better in this world than mailbox money, Conrad. I promise you.
I can't argue that. Terry winds up working on top with Hulk Hogan for some shows. He even did a Saturday night's main event against him. In hindsight, do you think Terry could have been a good long-term opponent for Hogan? This is very much the heel factory era where it's just one big monster guy after another. That's what they really want Hogan with. Funk perhaps doesn't fit that bill, but he does bring out the best in his opponents. It feels like he could have had a really good pay-per-view build. Maybe not the first WrestleMania, but I'd like to see him versus Hogan at 2 instead of Bundy. What say you?
Yeah, Terry could have been a great opponent for Hogan because Terry would have known how to work with Hogan to embellish Hogan's skills. But McMahon was very cautious to not book Hogan with average sized guys. He wanted him to sell for a guy that was bigger than him. It's the same concept I used when I hired Mick Foley to book him with The Undertaker. You're looking for an opponent. And Foley was 6'4" or 300 pounds. And I think that's kind of the same theory that we're talking about here in this topic, is the fact that Vince was going to make sure, and I don't blame him for this, he's going to make sure that Hogan was booked with the right guy that could create the right visual and the right dynamic so that when the Hulkster sold, it had more believability.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot to say for that. Protecting the golden goose who's now spitting out these golden eggs in the form of tickets sold.
Well, it's not going to be too much longer, and Terry's had enough. Terry wrote in his book that the travel was just too much for him, which we hear a lot about the schedule back in those days. And that one morning his alarm went off at 6 a.m. and Jimmy Hart, his manager at the time, wakes up and asks Terry where he's going. Terry responds something like, "Jimmy, you caught me. I can't take it anymore. I'm going home, going back to my girls." If there is one criticism of Terry Funk, it feels like maybe the only thing you could circle back to is perhaps he doesn't always give the best notice.
Yeah. Well, he was a true independent contractor. He got burned out. Simple as that. He had burned out on the travel. He got burned out on the fact that his push had been lessened. And so he saw the handwriting on the wall, was going to cut his losses before they got too stacked up. And he walked. I'm not advocating that, but that's the way that Terry played the game. And he knew that it was time for him to go. What was he going to do? Stick around for another few weeks so he could do more jobs?
Right.
So he just helped facilitate their decision for WWE, WWF, whatever it was at that time, and to cut his losses and move on. He knew he wouldn't have an issue get booked, and he didn't.
Let's talk about 1989, because that's really the next time we see him on a major stage. He's going to take a little bit of a break from wrestling. try his hand at some acting, do Roadhouse and some other things. And then eventually Jim Herd reaches out to him in 89 about bringing him in. And when I saw that in the research, I thought, well, boy, that's got JR's fingerprints all over it. What can you tell us about Terry Funk coming into World Championship Wrestling in 89?
Well, I talked to Herd about a lot of things. And because again, the dynamic there, the booking committee and all that stuff. Well, as soon as 3:30 or 4:00 came, those guys were on planes to Charlotte or wherever, getting home. And so that would leave me with Mr. Herd, which I didn't mind, quite frankly. We had good conversations about football and sometimes about wrestling. But I told him that I thought that Terry could help us, and I thought he could help the roster, not just a match. I said, and plus he's got a great way of booking himself. He understands what he can do, what he can't do. He'll do a believable angle, and I think he's a fresh face, and he's got a great name, great reputation. And at that time, we were honoring the NWA title a little bit more, and he's a former champion. So, but Terry exceeded what I perceived he might do when it came to WCW at that point in time. He over delivered, in my opinion.
Let's talk about how we bring him back creatively. He's doing commentary with you at Clash of the Champions for Steamboat versus Flair, the classic match from the Superdome. How was Terry to work with in the color commentary role?
Loved it. I loved it. It was a new adventure for him. It was a new challenge, Conrad. It's like, you're getting so involved in broadcasting because of the shows that you do with your roster of misfits, including me, that it's fun when you get to do a shot like you did on the A&E thing with the Flair robe. It's fun when you're, I'm Conrad Thompson, your host of that dark side stuff. And which is good. So you get the itch a little bit. You kind of get this. I think I can do that. It's another place to go. So I think that's kind of where Terry was. It was he had done commentary for a match or whatever, but we did the whole pay-per-view or the whole Clash or whatever it may be. And I love working with him. I really did. He used the same logic, the same skill set. He's a great talker. He knew how to get talent over, and he wasn't like so many pro wrestlers who want to become a commentator, but they're still very much prioritizing their words to get themselves over.
Yeah.
And that was not Terry. Terry got the talent over, and coming from an NWA champion, former NWA champion, Hall of Fame level guy, made sense, and people believed it. And, as his partner, I wanted to make sure that I would give him any kind of ringing endorsement I could that this is coming from a former NWA champion. And that means a lot in our world. And it did mean a lot in our world. So he was fun to work with, fun as hell. But he did that. We approached, we went over things like how to get in and out of a segment, Conrad, but in the middle, like after the bell rang, so to speak, it was all ad lib, and it worked out really well in that respect. I love working with him. I'd work with him again if I had an opportunity.
Well, we know that eventually it's going to be announced that Terry Funk is going to be one of 3 judges at Wrestle War 89. As a reminder, we've got a bit of a controversy. This is the middle of the trilogy. In Chicago, Funk picks up the win. He becomes the world champion, but there is a second referee involved. So they schedule the rematch at the Clash. It was poorly promoted. The quote unquote booker gets shown the door as a result of how poor the attendance was, but it is one hell of a long match. And now it's time. Oh, there's a little controversy. Was Flair's leg under the rope? Wasn't it? So now it's the war to settle the score at Wrestle War 89 in Nashville. But we wanted to make sure that we have a definitive winner. So we're not just going to rely on the referees. If this thing comes down to a draw, we're going to have a winner because we've got 3 judges at ringside: Lou Thez, Pat O'Connor, and Terry Funk.
Not bad.
Buddy, this has your fingerprints all over it. Am I wrong?
No. again, we're trying to add credibility to the core product of pro wrestling. And I mean, that'd be like doing baseball. Okay, we got Mantle, we got Gehrig, we got Babe Ruth. I think we have our hitters lined up. I think we're good. And I thought the same thing about this deal. You know, Lou is such a iconic figure, and so affiliated with the NWA including on a global basis. Pat O'Connor from New Zealand, you know, had his run back in the 60s, but he was available and he was accessible, and he look. These guys all wanted a booking. They all got paid. They got a payday. They were booked. And so I thought it was great. I really enjoyed what we did there. But I was not aware of all the intricacies of the post-match. You know, Steamboat and Flair go out and have another classic. Those some bitches could not have a bad match ever that I ever saw. But boy, the post-match was magnificently historic, without a doubt.
Today's episode is brought to you by Blue Chew. When you take a Blue Chew, get ready to meet your new gimmick. He's confident. He walks into the room with a chin up. He makes eye contact. This stuff is crazy. I think mine's talking. He's the cock of the walk, if you know what I mean. Blue Chew is better sex in a tablet. What they've done is they've combined 4 ingredients into one powerful solution. 2 ingredients to get you hard physically, and 2 to support arousal and desire in the brain. Here's what you need to know about Blue Chew Gold. It works fast and it lasts. And now guys can have a complete experience in the bedroom with Blue Chew Gold. It turns out there is a reason Blue Chew's the #1 brand for better sex, and you could experience it for yourself right now at bluechew.com. And boy, do we have a special deal for our listeners. Right now, when you buy 2 months of Blue Chew Gold, you get the 3rd for free with the promo code JR. That's promo code JR. You'll also receive an additional 10% off plus free overnight shipping on your first order. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast and the bedroom.
The post match is really something else. As you know, Flair's going to beat Steamboat. Terry Funk interrupts your interview with Flair and asks him for a title shot. Flair, who's now babyface, says, well, Terry, you're not really in the top 10, and the NWA has the top 10. Funk snaps. He puts Flair on the floor, tries to pile drive him through a ringside table. It doesn't break, but it is an early, table spot and a huge angle at the time. I assume this was some of your creative. Was Flair involved? What can you tell us about this?
No, it wasn't my creative. I was surprised that it even happened. I knew they were going to do something post-match. And generally for me, my work would be better if I didn't know every little detail. Because what happens is that you precondition yourself as to what you're told will happen. Then something comes up that you got to call an audible. And if you're so conditioned to what's going on, now you're processing, oh, this screwed up. I didn't want to have this screwed up issue in my mind. I want to call what I saw in a real way. And so, and as authentic as I could. So I didn't have anything to do with that. I think that was, I'm sure it was Rick and Terry, and I don't know that how plugged in Rick was on the pile driver spot on the table. I will say that, Conrad, it looks like that once again, Terry was a trendsetter. Look at tables now.
Oh yeah, big time.
My friend, the Dudley boys,
I did okay with it.
Yeah, they made a living on the table. Devon get the tables. And then you get all these other guys doing spots. I've seen tables stacked up. I always think of Terry. I said, well, Terry started this whole damn thing with one table. Now look where it's evolved to. So, again, trendsetter, visionary, so many little things that were perceived to be little things have become a part of our culture now in pro wrestling.
Let's talk about the booking committee briefly. I know he's also going to be joining the booking committee. I think at the time it's alongside you, Ric Flair, Kevin Sullivan, and Jim Cornette. Does that sound right?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
As being part of the committee, he brings in a guy from Mexico he knows real well to work a TV match with him, a little fella named Eddie Guerrero. And Funk wrote in his book, he was, quote, shocked that he didn't get an offer. And this match is sort of folklore now. What were the conversations about Eddie back then, as best you can recall?
Same old shit, Conrad. He's too small.
I see.
I mean, you can peel the onion back over here and over there and whatever. Too small. He's 5'8", 5'9". And I love Eddie Guerrero. I hired Eddie Guerrero to come to WWE. That's how much I believed in him. But again, when you have active performers on a decision-making caucus, like the booking committee, it's hard to remain objective. And you have to pick your hills to die upon. Eddie, other than Terry, Eddie didn't have a real didn't have real good representation on the committee. But Terry, knew him from the territory, and Terry had worked matches with Eddie's father. So there was a relationship there. But there's no doubt in my mind that you look at it now, it's a no-brainer. Why in the hell would you hire Eddie Guerrero? He's too short. He's too small. And he didn't have enough representation on the committee to get it out of committee and to make it a law.
Let's also mention Jim Hurd. We talked about him when we first started talking about WCW, but he comes up in Terry's book and he brings up a conversation that he was having with Dick Murdoch when Hurd comes by and asks Murdoch, hey, what's wrong with the company? Which I guess Hurd would solicit advice all the time. Like, hey, what would you do? And just looking for input. Well, supposedly, as the legend goes in Terry's book, Murdoch answered, well, Jim, it's you. You don't know a goddamn thing about this business. And that was an opinion shared by a lot of folks in the locker room, but I don't know that a lot of folks just said it straight up to him. Do you remember this story?
I remember the story. I didn't hear it. I wasn't a witness to it, but I could certainly see it happening. But that was Murdoch, outspoken. And Murdoch probably in his own unique way was trying to help Hurd.
Right.
Maybe you should back out of the day-to-day and the creative, because that was probably one of Mr. Hurd's biggest downfalls, was trying to get involved in creative. And that was a mistake, quite frankly. I mean, we got the illustrations, we got the evidence, hunchbacks, ding dongs, some of that shit. Ric Flair getting a haircut, all these things. He wanted to be so involved in the creative that I think it was a negative, not a positive.
Let's talk a little bit about his relationship with Ric Flair. Terry wrote in his book that Rick was upset with the promos he was cutting on him while he was out, quote unquote, injured. Do you remember there being obviously Terry and Rick are the best of friends, but Rick can be an emotional guy, as we both know.
Yep.
Remember him being upset with Terry?
Yeah, I do. And I remember getting phone calls. What are you guys trying to do? Kill me?
Wow.
No, Rick, we're not trying to kill you. We're selling a fucking angle. Anybody that knows an angle and how you sell it will be you. So, no, we're not trying to kill you. But a lot of the guys, he knew Rick would always get a straight answer from me. He always also knew I would take his call. If some of the booking committee guys saw that Flair was calling them, they might just avoid that phone call as long as they could until they had to accept it. And I didn't have any guilt in that regard. I knew what we're trying to do. We're trying to get heat on Funk and make him a heel. And goddamn, he was middle-aged and crazy then. And we knew our hero was going to ride back in on his big white horse sooner than later. But yeah, he didn't like it. I remember we did an angle one time with, he's passed on now. He worked in the office. Ron, God damn, I just had it tip of my tongue too. But he came out, he looked a little bit like Barney Fife, had a Flair-like robe on.
Yep.
Remember that? Ron Ames. I think Ron died of HIV or something.
Oh shit.
Yeah, nice guy. He really was a nice guy, hard worker, did PR and things like that. But Terry sees him in the office and says, there's my guy for play the part of Ric Flair. And Ron was about, like I said, he looked like Barney Fife. He looked like Don Knotts. And that was one of his impressions. He'd do it at happy hour. It was funny.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Ron passed away in 1993.
So, but a good dude. And all he did was he did a very limp woo. And that offended Nate. And again, it was like, you're really getting pissed. So this must be working. If you are pissed off,
you're smart to the business and you're pissed off, it's working.
And it may be working to these other folks out there, as Herd would say, the hinterlands. And it did work. You know, that showed that was a great marriage. And, you know, my God, Flair and Funk, are you kidding? So come on, Rick. So he got over it, as we all know, but he did get his feelings hurt. But he was out of the picture. He didn't want to be out of the picture, but that was the angle, how the angle was set up to sell. Somebody's got to be out of the picture for a while with this injury. And people aren't dropped on their head on tables outside the ring very often. So that's kind of where that was. But Rick was pissed off for a while about that.
Let's talk about Ricky Steamboat. Terry Funk is going to main event Clash of the Champions against Ricky Steamboat, where Steamboat wins by DQ because Funk has repeatedly hit Steamboat with a ringside mic. And it's pretty amazing when you think about how timeless Terry Funk is. This is happening 14 years after he won the NWA World title, and he's still main eventing Clash of the Champions. But he's on a collision course with Ric Flair. They finally meet at Great American Bash in Baltimore, July 23rd, 1989. It drew the biggest and best gate WCW had until 1996. So quite the spectacle here.
Yeah.
Flair would pin Funk with an inside cradle, even after Funk debuted as new manager, Gary Hart. The match itself is one that fans still talk about. Flair occasionally watches this one. I know he called and asked me, "Hey, when was I wearing the purple and I wrestled Funk again? I want to watch that. What was that?" Great American Bash 89, Rick.
Yeah.
Go out of your way to see it. It's a great match. Not my favorite they had. We're going to get there in a moment, but what a moment it was. What about Gary Hart though? Terry Funk is a hell of a promo. Why did we think we needed Gary Hart? Was it to make sure the fans booed him?
That was a consideration without a doubt, because Rick had not made that full transformation into babyface land.
Yeah.
He resisted that, quite frankly, for a long time, because he had more fun being a heel. Rick loved to be booed. He loved that sort of interaction with the live audience. But, you know, he'd been around so long and so beloved and respected, more importantly, because of his work ethic and his skill set, that people were starting to cheer him anyway. But I think Gary would stack the deck a little bit more against Nate, therefore making it more easily to motivate the audience to cheer Flair, the underdog, because Gary was a looming figure on the outside. Gary Hart wasn't a small guy. He's probably 6'2" or 6'3". He had that great facial expression. And we didn't need Gary to cut the promos for Terry. Unless Terry wasn't there, then you had one of the great representatives that you could get cutting promos for this angle. But I think that was the situation there. And I can promise you that if Rick and Terry had not endorsed it and liked it, checked the box, Gary Hart would not have been in the picture. The talents made sure that happened for whatever reasons they may have had. Now, you may talk to Rick sometime at a family reunion or something. You might ask him, how did Gary Hart get picked?
Right.
Was that your idea? Was it Terry's idea? Was it? Because I don't know that it would have been Herd's idea, but it might be. You know, I don't underestimate that either. But I think that was the reason. Gary was such an established heel that he made. It wasn't the he's going to make Terry a even more hated heel. He was going to make Rick even a more beloved new babyface.
Well, Gary forms the JTEX Corporation, and Terry Funk and the Great Muta are put together, and now they're going to face Sting and Ric Flair at Halloween Havoc. Not in a regular match, not in just a regular old cage match, but an electrified cage match. Before we get there, we should talk about the buildup that got a lot of people upset. Terry Funk is going to put a plastic bag over Ric Flair's head in an attempt to suffocate him.
Yeah.
The legend goes that this got Mr. Hurd summoned to Ted Turner's office. Hey, the fuck are you doing down there? What do you remember about this?
I mean, it got corporate heat.
Yeah.
And it got, I'm not so sure Ted gave a shit, but his board and his underlings, they did give a shit.
A lot.
Yeah. And so it was a major deal for a while. But nobody lost their job. So I always say, well, it must have been, I'm sure Ted had to do this lip service. Cause obviously Terry was not going to suffocate Flair. I mean, that means death. So anyway, I don't want to say it got blown out of proportion. It should never have happened. But I can tell you that, on the corporate side, who looked at us as redheaded stepchildren anyway, they were pissed. Irresponsible broadcasting is how I remember that story. And, I'm sitting in a position, I don't know who's going to do it. And then says, what do? You got to call it, Conrad. I can back off my call, back off my intensity a little bit to not glorify it, glamorize it. But it is what it is. There it is. Look at it. You can see it. So, it wasn't a good day at the office on that deal.
Let's talk about the Thunderdome. No, not the one in WWE. The original one, the OG here from Halloween Havoc 1989. That's what we're calling this crazy electrified cage match. And the paper on the cage, there's lots of decoration, if you will. It actually catches on fire right before the match, which turns into a whole thing. This is a very WCW moment. What do you remember sitting ringside and seeing things fall apart here?
Well, you hope that it could be salvaged, that we didn't, go down like the Titanic. I remember Great Muta spitting his mist. I think I recall that. And on the fire, I didn't know why we did that match. I don't know why we had to have an electrified cage. Now that's a Jim Hurd decision or influence, at least, that maybe the folks at Turner Home Entertainment thought was cool, and that happened often. But I don't know why we had to have that such a gimmick, because we had an amazingly personal issue, and he had some of the greatest talents in the history of wrestling involved. I'm going to let those guys decide what they want to. I learned that from Cowboy. What do you guys want to do? I want to work a return. Tell me how you're going to get there. What's in your mind? How would you book this match? But I don't think any of those guys sort of booked an electrified cage and all that bullshit. I mean, my God, look at the people that are at ringside. You got Gary Hart out there. You got Ole Anderson out there, 2 Hall of Fame guys. Look in the ring. Young, Great Muta, who probably should have been the NWA champion at some point in time. That never happened. And I think him being Japanese was one of the issues. He didn't speak good enough English. So, you go back and look back in the 40s and 50s, some of those cats that were champion, excluding Lou, a lot of those guys were not great orators. But they were hired and they were kept on because of their work in the ring, not for their verbal skills. So I always thought that we missed the boat on Muta on that deal. But nonetheless, it was what it was. But the whole cage thing, it made a good promo.
Yeah.
Which is why I think that it was a Hurd Turner Home Entertainment concept. Because I just can't imagine the guys that are in the match creating that.
Well, let's talk about how interesting this is, because Bruno is here. We're throwing everything against the wall here. Bruno's going to make his debut. He's the special guest referee. Ole's in the corner for Sting and Flair. Gary is in the corner for Funk and Muta. And the match ends when one of the cornermen throw in the towel. Flair has Funk in the figure 4. Ole's punching Gary Hart, who happens to throw the towel in, and now Sting and Flair are the winners. There's so many finishes in this era designated to be cute.
Yeah.
Not very many that are decisive. In hindsight, Were finishes like this hurting WCW long term, do you think?
I think so. I think it hurts any company, Conrad.
Yeah.
You can only slip on so many banana peels. You can only have so many inadvertent this or inadvertent that leads to the conclusion of the match. And again, just sitting in on booking meetings and talking to top talent over my career, you ask the talent, what the hell? What do you want to do? How can we get to, it's like Cowboys saying, I'm going to bring you in January. I'm going to program you with a dog, JYD, back in the heyday, and I want to blow it off on Thanksgiving night in New Orleans at the Superdome. Give me your vision of how that can be facilitated. So it wasn't always just the booker doing it. The booker wanted the talent to buy in, be emotionally invested in their angle, because the more tickets they sold, the more money they were going to make. So you had a roadmap. You start in January, for example. Could be earlier, could be a little bit later, but usually not. And then you're going to blow it off on Thanksgiving. Subsequently, the returns will come through the Christmas holiday. So there's a method to the madness there. But I just don't think we needed to do that. I don't think it added anything other than it was a cool promo. That's it.
Right. Well, next up is the conclusion, I guess you would call it, with this incredible feud with Flair. And I think Flair's 89 has been discussed forever. Of course, we start with the trilogy with Steamboat. We're immediately programmed with Funk. And it's going to culminate at Clash of the Champions, Troy, New York, the New York Knockout. It's the ultimate I Quit match. Flair's going to make Funk submit to the figure 4 leg lock. Dave Meltzer gave it 5 stars. I think it's probably, if it's not my very favorite, it's my second favorite Ric Flair match ever. And it's got to be near the top for Terry Funk too. What say you?
I loved it. I selected Gordon solely to be my partner, selfishly, egocentrically, because I wanted to work with him. And it was going to be up to me to carry the load anyway, which is fine. I was paid well for it. I wanted to work with Gordon. I didn't know how many more big events we were going to have. And of course, the nice thing about Clash was that there were commercial breaks. So if Gordon needed me to freshen up his drink, which I did. Screwdrivers for the drink of the day, as long as there's plenty of vodka. I don't think the vitamin C content was a focal point. But I wanted to work with Gordon. You got Tommy Young as a referee, arguably the best referee ever. Certainly one of them, top 2 or 3, in my estimation. Then you got Nate, you got Terry. My God, you got Gary Hart, Hall of Famers everywhere. So it was one of my favorite matches to do. I remember it was a cold night in Troy, New York. I'd never been to Troy, New York. I know Gordon was very apprehensive. Night before dinner, he was worried about his performance and how he was going to be, because it was a 2-hour show, and he was apprehensive, to say the very least. So I thought that was just a hell of a presentation. My issue was, it wasn't an issue. My thought process has led me to wonder how we're getting out of this thing.
Right.
Because it was I quit. That's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
One of these 2 cats got to say I quit. How are we going to get there? So I loved it. I thought it was a hell of a night. I can't even remember anything else on that card right now, Conrad. The undercard, the semi-main, all that good stuff, what opened the show, all that good stuff. But I can tell you that I feel very honored to be a part of that presentation. I don't know what Rick did. Did Rick ever say anything about that? Did he enjoy that match?
Loved it.
Yeah, good.
Loved it.
Yeah. Well, it was like you said, good advice. If you get a chance, folks, go check it out. Go back and watch that one match.
This is the one.
This is the one.
Funk wraps up his run here doing commentary before his contract expires, including working with you for part of Starrcade 89 and Wrestle War 90. Do you think there's anything else that could have been done with Terry, or was he ready to go home?
That's a good question. And my speculative answer would be, I think he might have been ready to tag out for a while. Again, Conrad, I don't have it in front of me, but I don't know how old he was at that point in time. He was, you can do the math there because you're a mortgage guy. You can all, you can work your calculator real well, but he wasn't a young guy in 93 or 89 or 90. He's got to be in his 40s or early 50s or something, right?
He was 45 in 89.
There you go.
So, when he leaves, he's going to be turning 46 years old here in 90.
Yeah. And even with a legendary guy like Terry, he knows what his body will endure. And he knows that his recovery time is starting to take longer because of his age and the fact that he was never a finesse guy. He was to a large degree, I guess you could say, but he was very physical. And his body took a beating. So I think more than anything, he was just ready to tag out and heal, quite frankly. And but I don't think he didn't hate the business. He didn't leave all pissed off and angry as I recall. And again, I had a little bit of say in who I worked with. So he gets 2 more shots. He and I working together, which should indicate to people with common sense, JR liked working with Terry Funk at the announce desk. And I did. So, because we didn't have long pre-games, we didn't have to go over. I've worked with people that had to have everything explained, and they would go behind my back and try to get more information on the finish. And I said, well, if that's what you want to do, then you can do that. But just don't share your information with me because I don't want to know. I'm a broadcaster. I'm going to look at this like a ball game and look at it as it's live. Same today. Saturday night on TNT, I'm not going to know. Come here from sick of what's going to happen. I could. I don't want to know.
Right.
I don't need to know. So I don't need it. I'm not that big a mark. I'm a mark. If that's a decent word today, I don't know if it is or not. But I think that he needed to heal and that's what he did. But he left under good stead. I mean, he had contributed a lot to the company.
Oh yeah, a ton.
And he had made money. And he got reinvented on national television. He's working a top program. I mean, come on, Conrad. He worked with Flair and Steamboat.
Yeah, he had a great run, made a lot of money. It feels like he always knows when to come in and when to go out. He's going to do some indie appearances. He's going to spend some time with his old pal Jim Cornette and Smoky Mountain. And then he gets an offer to go back to the WWF. This is from Terry's book. I was actually supposed to work in the WWF in late 93. They called me about becoming head booker. They were doing their big Survivor Series show in Boston, and they wanted me to wear some silly outfit with a blue mask to be one of Jerry Lawler's knights, taking on Bret Hart and 3 of his brothers in a big tag match. Their plan was Bret was going to beat me, then take my mask off and put his finishing hold on the sharpshooter and beat me again. After that, they said I would become the creative head of the company, replacing Pat Patterson, my old friend. Patterson had gone from being Ray Stevens' tag partner to being the WWF's booker, but Pat was looking to step down and take it a little easier. I guess we should mention he wakes up the morning of Survivor Series and leaves a note for Vince that says, "My horse is sick. I think he's dying. I'll see you later."
I remember that.
And he left the whole outfit there, folded up nicely and neatly. Thanks, but no thanks. He didn't want to get beat not once, but twice on TV after he had all this, I guess we should say, brand equity built for himself. Do you remember there being discussion of not only this piece of creative with the Knights, but we're going to have you come in and replace Pat Patterson? That's not something I've heard outside of Terry's book.
I remember the match.
Yeah.
Lawler's Knights versus Bret and company. I remember that well. I think that was in the Boston Garden.
That's right.
Because I dressed with Monsoon and Heenan, which is a sitcom in itself. God damn, we should have had a hidden camera there. It was just hilarious. I was so blessed to be around those 2 men. They were so good to me. I think that's what motivates me to try to play it forward a little bit. And in the last 6 months or a year, I've become a little bit more accustomed to that. And I like it. I like that role. But I never heard the story about Terry coming in and taking over the book.
Okay.
I never heard that story. Now, you also got to understand too, Conrad, in 90. I just arrived in 93.
Yeah, you're not the power broker yet.
Whatever. I'm not nothing. But I was figured I was just going to make my career would be standing on the sideline wearing a visor and holding a clipboard. Because I got Tom Brady in there playing quarterback. They weren't going to use me. Didn't need me.
Yeah.
But there were enough shows to go around that I would always have plenty of work. But yeah, I never heard the story about Terry as a booker. No, I'm not saying it's not true or anything along those lines. Just I was so new there that I was just trying to stay out of the way. So things like now Bruce could tell you that he was joined at the hip, right?
Yeah, but he never told me that. So
no, I'm just saying if it were true, he could verify it, yay or nay, I would assume.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm trying to imply without dumping on our old pal, Mr. Funk. I don't think that's true, but I think that could have been, sometimes we've heard stories of guys who meet with Vince and Vince will maybe say something like, we got big plans for you. I could see you being champion one day.
Yeah.
And then at the end, what they heard was, well, Vince promised me I'd be champion. Well, they didn't really say that. He said he could see you doing big things and having a successful run. And he's trying to encourage you, but at the same time, he's not saying, mark your calendar book, bud, because next November, Survivor Series, you're the world champion.
Yeah, no. And I've been involved in those conversations.
Yeah.
Where you tell, look, it's not lying.
No, you're giving upward mobility. You're letting them know, hey, there's an opportunity to advance here.
If you do all the right things, you got a shot at getting to the top of the ladder.
Yes.
Produce. Play big in the big games. Don't be a pain in the ass. Be reliable. And if you're reliable enough in pro wrestling, Conrad, you might just get your push. And that's what everybody loves, the fucking push.
They do. Everybody.
The push is pushing up to more money. People want to wonder, what's so big about the push? The push should take you upwardly mobile, as you mentioned. Nice word. And to make, to make more money.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's all it's about.
Yep.
Cash and creative, baby. That's it. So, I never heard that other story, but hey, I'm not going to tell you that Terry would have met a good booker.
Yeah.
He might have had to have some, structural help. In other words, if the booking is due to be in on Wednesday, we can't say, well, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
That don't work. If that worked, I'd been fired a long time ago because I had to have the payroll done on a certain day to get the talent paid. And the last thing you want is to have a talent have their checks come late or the next week. That's kiss of death. That never happened under my watch.
Want to grow your business with the power of podcast advertising? Reach loyal, engaged audiences through trusted host endorsements across the Podcast Heat Network. To learn more about advertising opportunities, email dave@podcastheat.com or visit our website at podcastheat.com.
Well, let's talk about what's next on Terry's watch. He's going to do a short-term deal with WCW in 94 before he starts doing death matches that he becomes famous or infamous for with Cactus Jack. What do you remember hearing about these IWA Japanese death matches that really became legendary and probably put Mick Foley on the map in a whole new way?
I think probably the biggest introduction for me for those matches, and again, you got to remember, folks, it wasn't like it is today where you could just stream it.
Right.
They weren't available everywhere. Tape traders got to see it before anybody else, quite frankly.
Yep.
I think probably through the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it's where I got more information regarding these matches because, as we all know, Meltzer's a major fan of anything Japanese.
Yep.
Has been for 30 years. And so by reading the Observer back in the day, I would say that's where I learned the most about it. And then you'd start seeing, you get a clip or something. But it's like this, we had that exploding barbed wire match with Omega and Moxley, right?
Yep.
Hell, I've never seen a whole
match.
No. I didn't. I had to go look it up. That was available now in this world.
Yeah.
So I researched it and I watched it. I watched several of them. But once you've seen one, you kind of seen them all because they're going to redo the same thing. Shit's going to blow up, and talents are going to get battered, bruised, and bloody. And so that's where you were. But I was not aware. I'd heard guys say, "Man, you should see that somebody might have been on the card. Somebody might have got to see the tape before I did, or something. Man, you should see what Funk's doing now. My God." Because he did things courageously, much like Mick, that nobody else wanted that booking. If they did, they're nuts. So anyway, I didn't see a lot of it, Conrad, but I did learn. I read about it in a textbook education through the Observer.
Well, you also read that Terry Funk became a locker room leader in ECW, spending a lot of time there, especially in 95, 96. And of course, he's going to wind up at Barely Legal, the first ECW pay-per-view, winning their world title. And it's 22 years after he's world champion the first time, and he's main eventing a pay-per-view in the process. It's really remarkable, you know, especially the stuff he was doing, the moonsault off the top, and they're calling him middle-aged and crazy. Around that same time, he's filming a documentary called Beyond the Mat, and they're going to document his WrestleFest out in Amarillo. And he's somehow getting the green light from all the good seed he's sowed over the years. He gets ECW talent there, FMW talent there, and even the WWF. You guys allow some folks to come in and make appearances.
Absolutely.
Brett,
that was an easy conversation with Vince too, by the way, to give McMahon credit, which I probably don't do enough here because people think I'm still mad at him for some fucking reason. Only had 26 years there, made a lot of money. So why would I be mad?
Yeah.
Come on. Well, he pulled something out of your ass. Okay. He also had me beat up several times. It's pro wrestling. Sometimes it's the theater of the absurd.
Yeah. And
that's what it is. But we had no issues with that. And as a matter of fact, if my memory serves me correctly, some guys were a little bit miffed, Conrad, because they weren't booked.
Really?
Yeah. Well, they wanted to go out of respect to Terry.
Wow.
Yeah. They wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to travel to Amarillo and be a part of the celebration because that's what everybody looked at, the celebration.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking somewhere along the way, well, if he's ever going to retire, it ain't going to be in Japan. It's going to be in Amarillo.
Yeah.
And little did we know that wasn't a real retirement either.
Well, so that's what I wanted to ask about. On the heels of this, and by the way, Brett wrestled Terry in the main event. Brett gets the victory. He's the world champion. Of course, all old school wrestlers go out on their back, and Terry's the epitome of that. But somewhere around here, he gets a call. He wrote in his book, Jim Ross, the great announcer who had come to the WWF and had become Vince's right-hand man, was the one who gave me the call. I'm pretty sure Cactus had promoted to him and Vince the idea of us working together. And hell, if they didn't want me at all, they wouldn't have called. How does this come to be? He's retired. He's done. But you know what? We got an idea.
Yeah, we always got an idea, baby. Mick was a big, obviously, advocate of Terry. Terry's Mick's hero.
Right.
But I'll tell you something else. Me talking to Brett, the next time I saw Brett in person, was very eye-opening as well. Along the lines that Brett said something to the effect that he's better than most of the guys we've got now.
Oh, shit.
Well, he was.
That's a hell of a statement, though.
Yeah, from your champion.
Yeah.
And the fact Brett knew Terry was an honorable guy. And he goes to his hometown and is allegedly his last match, which we find out later certainly wasn't. And Terry puts him over. You could have worked a DQ. They could have worked the count out, all that horse shit.
Yeah.
But neither of those two guys wanted to have a cheap finish, Conrad. They wanted to have a match with a conclusive winner because both knew how to win and both knew how to lose. Too many wrestlers today are so insecure that they think if they lose a match, that it's killing them. You destroyed my push on a loss. You got to be shitting me. You got to be kidding me. Come on. Well, it's not. I'm just not comfortable with it. Well, then fucking get comfortable. Use your great, expensive goddamn resume that qualifies you for other six-figure or six-figure plus jobs, and go do that. Because this is it's a play. You're being cast. You're gonna be a bad guy. You're gonna be a good guy. Well, somebody's taking an arrow in this Western. Somebody's going down. My great hero John Wayne, the goddamn Bruce Dern, that bastard, shot him in the back in the Cowboys. I still pissed off at Bruce Dern. So every time Bruce Dern gets shot or killed in another movie, I kind of rejoice. I think it's kind of cool. That's what kind of mark I am to John Wayne, and that comes through my father. So, but Brett's. That's what I told Vince. I said, we got Foley, who's already establishing his niche for us, and now you got our champion endorsing this guy. So it wasn't easy. It was an easy sell, Conrad, to get Mick booked again, or excuse me, get Terry booked again. That would have been his second or third run in WWE, something like that.
Yeah, he's been there a few times at that point.
And he came under a new character.
Well, what's fascinating to me is the way he left the whole Survivor Series thing. My horse is sick. Supposedly, and Terry wrote this in his book, when he sees Vince again, one of the first things Vince says is, "So how's the horse?"
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Yeah. Well, Vince didn't hold the grudge. He let me hire him, bring him back. And my track record, without breaking my arm, patting myself in the back, thanks to Gorilla Monsoon saying, my track record had been pretty decent, bringing talent in. And Mick was so motivated to work with him. I also think that Terry's influence in our locker room was widespread.
Yeah.
He took the time to help everybody, and everybody needs to get better at what they do. We all do. What you do, what I do, we can all get better.
Sure, of course.
And Terry was the kind of guy that would take time to sit in a dressing room or locker room and take his time to go over stuff with talent and that needed help on putting their matches together instead of just working spots. He actually would tell them how to get into in and out of a hold that could incorporate their spots. It just wasn't indiscriminate freestanding spots. It tied together within the story that these cats were telling. So he was a big. Was he on top and drawing huge money? Probably not. He was always entertaining. I think the most prolific thing I remember those guys is when DX showed them off the stage in that dumpster. You remember that?
Of course I do. We're going to get there in a minute. I do want to ask about Chainsaw Charlie. Again, once upon a time, he's the NWA World Champion. Just very recently, he was now the ECW World Champion. And he's Terry Funk, but he's going to come in under a different persona, but it's not exactly a secret.
Right.
It's Chainsaw Charlie. And I've always heard that, I think this is a reference to his old barber, and it's just sort of an inside joke. What do you remember about this? Whose idea was it? And how did we get to, is it true, the famous Cornette story? It was his idea to have him come out of a box.
I would say that Terry always came with an idea. I heard Leroy McGurk tell some talents in the mid-70s, when you work in this territory, when you get to your town, you have to have a way in your mind to win. You have to have a way to lose, and you have to have a way to do an open-ended finish that would facilitate a return or more than one return. And so I'm saying that Terry never came to work without ideas. So I'm thinking anything that Terry, Chainsaw Charlie, some of the crazy shit that they did was largely initiated by Terry and then endorsed by Mick. And look, young guys like Billy Gunn and Road Dogg, they grew up in their lifetime. Road Dogg was the second generation guy. He knew the legend of the Funks.
Of course.
He lived in his dad I'm sure his dad wrestled Terry Funk for the NWA title on more than one occasion back in the day. So I think all those guys look forward to working with Terry. And whatever Terry said he wanted to do was for the betterment of the match. They knew he wasn't selling them a bill of goods, as we would say, to get himself over. Terry was going to book something that would be sensational, memorable, and help get everybody elevated that's involved in that presentation. So I'm saying that Terry, the box thing, hey, Cornette would remember that stuff real well too, no doubt. So I just think that I think Terry was the leader of the pack and the creative.
What did you think of the presentation? Baby powder and pantyhose.
It was entertaining.
Yeah.
It was different. It was unique. It had Terry's fingerprints all over it. He could make that departure from that white meat baby face that came out of Amarillo, that became the NWA champion, that became a hated heel, especially in Florida, because the Briscoes and the Funks had that amazing rivalry that I don't know, was ever duplicated, quite frankly. So, but that's what we said at the very beginning of our podcast today. Terry, how many times have we talked about Terry reinventing himself?
Yeah.
In this show alone.
Over and over and over.
And he always stayed ahead of the curve.
Always.
And he was always willing to take a chance and put his routines, his established routines aside to reinvent something new. And that's what I encourage a lot of talents today. You got to keep evolving your game. If you're a fastball pitcher, at some point in time, you got to mix in some breaking balls or some off-speed pitches. You got to change, or it becomes same as. And a lot of guys are so egocentric. Well, it's been good enough for so-and-so. It's good enough in Japan. Why isn't it good enough here? Well, first of all, we ain't fucking in Japan.
So there's that.
There's that. Yeah. So anyway, he's just one of the most creative visionaries that I ever met. I would say if I sat down and really thought about it, maybe write a book about my favorite talents and stories about them all, he would be one of the first guys I would want to write about, because he's that extraordinary. He may be, some people are going to say, well, golly, JR, after he listened to you and Conrad, was there anybody any better than Terry Funk?
Probably not.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, he's got to be on a lot of Mount Rushmores. And I think it's unfortunate that so much of the great stuff he did, we can't just easily access. You talked earlier about how these days everything's at your fingertips, but even predating tape trading stuff, there's so many great old school classic Terry Funk things that are just, they weren't recorded. There's no record of them, but the people who were there knew they happened. And the people who were there when Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack were on Raw in that New Age Outlaw moment you referenced, they push the dumpster off the stage to the floor, and you guys sell it like it is a major medical event. Sonny is distraught. There is multiple scenes here. It's an extended scene. The guys are wheeled out on ambulances. It feels like a major happening. And then later that night, they come back in hospital gowns and fend off the Outlaws.
Might have left that out. I might have left that out if I'd have been booking it.
Yeah.
Simply because it's the same concept as leaving Flair unbooked after his injury in Nashville. It might have sold better if they had give it a week.
Yeah.
But it was entertaining, but I thought it might be a little premature for the comeback. But seeing those guys in hospital gowns and having a blast, the crowd, and if you hadn't seen that, folks, go back and hear the crowd reaction.
Oh yeah,
the crowd was. Big old JR is wrong here, which happens a lot. But god dang, man, they were just, that crowd was electrified. They loved that combination of Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack.
Yes, they did. And by the way, we finally get our WrestleMania moment for Terry Funk. It's long overdue. It's Cactus and Chainsaw versus the Outlaws. It's a dumpster match. They go 10 minutes and 1 second. Meltzer would say Funk wrestled as Terry Funk instead of as Chainsaw Charlie, with no reason being given. Not much wrestling, but it was a typical gimmicked brawling match with some creative spots. Gunn power bombed Funk into the dumpster. They wound up brawling backstage with Jack hitting both men with hard chair shots and put them on a forklift. Funk got behind the wheel and deposited both of them in a dumpster for the title win, 3 1/4 stars. And supposedly the power bomb on Funk into the dumpster by Billy Gunn really messed Terry's back up. And the next night, some major stuff happens. Sean Waltman shows up. He's jumping ship from WCW. Now he's joining the WWF and officially joining DX. And now it's official. The New Age Outlaws are official members of DX. Triple H is now the leader. Shawn Michaels is out. And the new crew here is going to help the Outlaws regain the tag straps in a steel cage match. And Funk's back has a bruise on it the size of a freaking watermelon.
Yeah.
So he can't do much. So they handcuff him to the cage and they just beat the shit out of Foley. In hindsight, this is a big night for the company, is it not?
Yeah. Yeah. And all those great talents got involved, and I can promise you this, Conrad, that every talent involved in that presentation had something to say about the finish and the presentation of that whole program. Triple H had something to say. All these guys that were involved had a piece of the action, creative action. So it was big time stuff. And it's all based on the fact that, we go out there to good old lonely Amarillo, home of the 72-ounce steak challenge. Conrad, I told the story, Conrad. Klondike Bill ate 2 of those in one setting.
Yep.
72 ounces. Big old steaks. So, and I get this, Mick Foley still singing the praises of Terry. And of course, then Bret Hart chimes in with his 2 cents, which is very valuable. And all of a sudden, we bring him back, him being Terry, pronoun boy. He killed him. Sting. Oh, sorry. Had a moment there, Conrad.
I hear that happens a lot.
And then all of a sudden he gets his WrestleMania moment, along with a WrestleMania payday. Good ending, man. Good ending for my friend.
And we're not all the way done, by the way. Since he's injured, though, we're going to send him out in style. We're going to have Mick Foley turn back into Dude Love, but this time he's a corporate stooge. But the way we get there is a Falls Count Anywhere match. It's the Raw main event. Terry Funk versus Mick Foley. Pat Patterson's the referee. Stone Cold is on commentary. The guys beat the shit out of each other in Richmond, Virginia. Go out of your way to find it on Peacock if you can. Ultimately, Mick gets the win and then promptly turns into Dude Love by dancing with Vince McMahon on stage. I know the show was about Terry Funk, but what a moment this must be for Mick Foley. Your hero, your mentor in the main event, Stone Cold on commentary, the Yoda of wrestling, Pat Patterson is your referee. And then the most powerful man in wrestling is going to be your new on-screen cohort as you turn heel and go with the persona you created as a kid. It's a dream scenario for Foley, is it not?
Oh yeah. Are you kidding me? It's like if he could have booked it, if he had complete autonomy, he meaning Mick, pronoun boy, then he would have booked the exact same thing. So, and I think it was a great homage to, it showed that McMahon had the ultimate respect for a guy that he didn't want to hire in Mick. And the fact that the homage and a salute to Terry Funk in his later stages of his career, how important it was to honor him by having him involved. For Funk and Mick to have their match, when I saw that booking, I was very excited and rejoiced. I can't wait to call this one because you knew it was going to be great. And they didn't sit around all day and go with their spots, for God's sakes. You do this, I'll do that. You breathe, you inhale, I'll exhale. I'll hit you, you sell. Then we'll go bing, 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 and I'll slap my leg. None of that shit happened. They, like you said, Conrad, accurately, they beat the shit out of each other.
Yes.
And they enjoyed every frigging moment of it.
Terry's going to stick around the company a little while longer. He's going to mostly be working underneath with talents like Too Cold Scorpio, Big Van Vader, Dustin Runnels, etc. But maybe the most memorable thing we would see, or the last memorable thing, is when he comes out at King of the Ring 98, once Mick is thrown off the cage. Eventually, he gets chokeslammed by Taker. Terry's just knows what to do in every instance, and he knew what not to do. It's in his book that in this era, Vince McMahon was encouraging him to run for the Senate in Texas. Did you ever hear that story?
Yeah. God, yeah. That's all we need. Hey, he probably brought some sanity to politics. God knows they could all use some help on both sides of the friggin' aisle. But Vince fell back in love with Terry.
Yeah.
And for good reason. This old McMahon's heartless. He's this, he's that. Okay. You have to look, you can't draw a conclusive analogy, a conclusive opinion, Conrad, on somebody if you've never met them, you've never worked with them, you never had any interaction, you've only read about it, you've only gone or heard a podcast like ours, or something along those lines. And there are a lot of good podcasts, by the way. So I think that Vince just found that great newfound respect in Terry.
Yeah.
That Terry was out there at his age with his body broken apart, and all these years of wear and tear, and was still not phoning a damn thing in. And that's what you want to permeate your locker room. That's why you bring guys like Terry Funk and Mick Foley into your company, is so that their attitude and their game day behavior is so positive for everybody that they're around.
Terry's going to finish up this run tagging with Justin Bradshaw as two tough Texans. And then eventually he goes to Vince and says, the job here is done. Vince thanked him. And Terry would do some various shots on the indies and occasional little Japanese appearance here and there. He's even going to sign for WCW, be their hardcore champion and the commissioner and all that silliness. But he came back to the company here to do a guest GM spot at a house show in Amarillo. And we wouldn't see him again here in the company until One Night Stand 2006. He did some angles with Tommy Dreamer to build up their match. And, of course, Edge and Mick Foley at One Night Stand. But still, it's not, I don't know if there's ever a right time to walk away, but I don't know. Seeing him here at One Night Stand 06, it was nice to see him. But in hindsight, it would have been okay not to see 61-year-old Terry in a hardcore match.
Agreed. But that would have broken his heart.
Yeah.
If that was the reason that he wasn't booked.
Yeah.
Well, Terry, come on, you're 61. God almighty. That would not have flown. Don't even bring that up, because all you can do is motivate him more to want to do it and do more crazy shit. But that was just him. Terry came to that event to steal the show.
And he did.
And
it won best match of the night on the Wrestling Observer reader poll. I mean, it really is. It's something where the guy just defies all limits,
Yeah.
Creatively, the way he's able to reinvent himself, and with his age. We don't see him again until he's inducted in the Hall of Fame along with his brother, Dory.
And that was a bullshit deal too, because they got no time.
Yeah.
Everything's times, all a TV show, and I detest that. The organic nature of a Hall of Fame, it should be objective in the selection. It should not be over selected by having too many people that can't speak. I know a couple of Hall of Famers called me this year and asked me to help them with their Hall of Fame speech in WWE. And I said, well, how much time you got? 2 minutes.
Oh man.
So maybe they stretch it to 3. And it's become too corporate in that respect for my tastes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they don't care what my tastes are anymore, which I get. I don't care what they're doing either. It's their deal. But, I thought him and Dory had no time. And Dory was not the great orator that Terry was. There are very few men in the history of pro wrestling that could talk as effectively, as memorably as Terry Funk. I thought they got jobbed there a little bit on that presentation. I think that was in Houston. I believe. So in any event, I didn't like the way that went down, but they deserve better. But I'm sentimental, and I still believe they deserve better. It's my story, and sticking to it.
Let's talk about his legacy in the business. I guess we should mention, unfortunately, his wife, Vicky. They got married August 14th, 1965. They were together her entire life. Sadly, she passed away March 29th, 2019. Any memories of Vicky you can share with us?
Oh, yeah. What a great woman. Fun as hell. I remember, it's funny. When I think of Vicky, I think of Jan, my Jan. And they got along so famously. And sometimes Vicky was very outspoken, had a great sense of humor. And I know, like a Cauliflower Alley Club event, you'd hear Jan cackling, hearty laughter from my little Italian. And you could look around, and there she sat talking to Vicky. So Vicky's a class lady. And look, she may have been up for sainthood. Let's remember, she was married to Terry Funk for over 40 years.
Full-time job, baby.
It's no kidding. So I loved her. I have a picture of my photo thing where she's holding a bottle of JR's barbecue sauce. And then I put a bottle of sauce, or we had a bottle of sauce put on all the tables one year at the Cauliflower Alley Club in Vegas. Great company, great event, great organization. Do good things for people that need help. And it also serves as a great reunion. I'm telling you, Conrad, if you took your cameras to the Cauliflower Alley Club and just became creative in who you interviewed, you might get some of the greatest ad-free stuff that you've ever found, because everybody's there in a talkative mood, and it ranges from big stars to underneath stars and whatever, but dedicated wrestling people. And you might hit a gold mine there that day.
Just so you know, we're going to be there, and I know that you're going to be there, so we're going to have fun. But I've actually been having fun over at jrsbbq.com lately, because
Attaboy.
Man, the sauce is back. Just this past weekend, it was Father's Day, and my dad wanted to smoke a butt for Father's Day. And so, of course, we got that butt meat, and JR loves the butt. But I'll tell you what we do is we get the meat, we slop it on a bun, and then we drizzle a little bit of JR's BBQ, and here we go, baby.
There you go, baby. You don't overthink it, bud. You don't overthink it. It's low and slow, and everything's low and slow until you start eating.
Yeah,
then the face quickens. But things are good. We're so close to getting. I've approved. I just used some this weekend. I did a little bachelor thing here. I was by myself at Father's Day, and so I did some cooking, got a therapeutic, and I used our new seasoning, and it's fucking fabulous. It's not that different than the old seasoning whatsoever. Some people will not even tell it's different, but we've got that. We've approved the taste. We've approved the packaging, the labeling, all that stuff. And I'm told that we should have everything in stock, because I ordered enough for a year.
Wow.
I think we sold like 7,000 bottles of sauce last year of seasoning.
Hey now.
Yeah. And I ordered more than that for one big shipment, so that when we come to Christmas and all those things, holiday shopping, we're not going to be out of nothing. So it's all good. We're back in good stead, inventory wise, for everything but the seasoning, but it's coming. I promise you. I use it this weekend. I wish I could send everybody a bottle, but we will be able to, coming sooner than later. I just can't speak for other people's deliveries, but it's been pretty cool. So business has been good. jrsbbq.com. It's funny too, Conrad. We're selling a lot of books. I got Slobber. We had those cookbooks. They sold out. And then we got Under the Black Hat and Slobber Knocker, both kicking it out there. And we do this. I sign them, personalize them. So if you want it. So it's all good. Business is good. I'm very blessed. And I appreciate our audience here supporting what we do. I really do.
It means a lot.
It does. It's hard. It warms my heart, quite frankly, because I know that I always get this feeling that little Jan smiling when I talk about this project. And she's going to say, she would have said to me, you got better things to do. You got too much on your plate. Slow down, honey. Well, honey can't slow down. I'm afraid to slow down. And I'm just not going to do it until my number's called. But I hope people will just bear with us on this seasoning issue. But until then, we got jalapeno honey mustard, chipotle ketchup, and two different barbecue sauces, and a bunch of other stuff. And I will close by saying this. It doesn't cost anything to look.
That's right.
jrsbbq.com. Just when you got time, just check it out and see if there's something there that you're interested in. And you might be surprised at some of the offers that we have that you were not aware of. So jrsbbq.com is a good destination to kill some time.
And we hope that you guys have enjoyed killing some time with us today. We're going to be back next week talking about Lex Luger. You know, we started the Lex Luger story a few weeks ago, Jim, but we only got through his WCW/NWA run. We're going to pick up where we left off, and we're going to talk about Lex and the WWF next week. That should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember those days on the Intrepid. I remember those days at the Lex Express. And I can tell you this, no booker, owner, whatever, that I ever worked for worked any harder to get somebody over and expense-wise. That bus was expensive to maintain. And then we did the thing where the Yokozuna thing on the Intrepid on the 4th of July. Holy shit. I was sweating grease. Oh, it was hot, hot, hot. But Vince did a hell of a job trying to get Lex over in that regard. And so we'll talk all about that. It's a good story, quite frankly, and very involved. But I always, and I'm glad our last Lex Luger show, Conrad, did really well. And I know that people are going to want the conclusion to be as involved in listening to that as they were the first go around. Well, we just go through half his career.
We're got a really strong July too. We're going to be covering Great American Bash 91, the Invasion pay-per-view, and Triple H in 95 and 96. A lot to unpack. Stay tuned next week right here to Grillin' JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.
Connie, you're beautiful. I love those cheeks. If I had cheeks like that, I would have two very large cheeks. My boy. Conrad, have a great week. Everybody out there, do something nice for somebody, and tell folks about our show. We appreciate it, and have a good week. Thanks, Conrad. You're the best.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.